Now, riding presents many problems of its own, but what about just getting your horse there in the first place, be it via trailer or leading it down to the arena? And then once you are there, if it's a new place, this can cause all sorts of anxiety related problems. And then there's the journey home, not always as straightforward as the journey there. Here to help you master each of these sequences is Mark Langley, currently on his way up to Queensland for another clinic tour. This week's podcast, while we've got him, is all about getting to and from. Hello, welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping people to understand their horses better, to provide solutions in a calm, connected way. I'm Jenny Langley.
And I'm Mark Langley.
Mark, your first question today is from Pam, who has a 10-year-old quarter horse she's had for 3.5 years, and she is really struggling to get him down to the arena. It's a walk from his paddock, and he's fine until he sees the stables and realizes that they're heading for the arena, even for groundwork. This is when he'll plant his feet and refuse to move. Now, Pam has tried to patiently wait and gently coax him and applying light pressure. Eventually they get there, but it's a trial. They are sort of surrounded by bush down at the arena. It's often a little bit spooky, but she's wanting to get some suggestions on how she can get him there more easily and how to ease his nerves when he's there.
So many reasons why horses don't want to go to another place. So one reason, which is probably, horses are creatures of habit, quite a bit. They get in their little routines, they have their friends, they have their comfortable places, and without a herd supporting them, they don't want to go somewhere that is maybe a place that they have to process a lot of things. So some horses, if you look at a herd, for instance, you might have one, depending on the size of the herd. Say, for instance, in this herd, in my mind, there's one horse that makes a lot of good leading decisions when things are going wrong, when branches break, when there's sort of something new in the paddock. They're the ones that kind of go out with a bit more, they've still got their caution, they've got their curiosity, and they try and process things, where the others go, well, big job, you do it. And some horses hand things over very quickly to other horses. So what happens is, if you're a handed over horse, then you're getting your confidence off the other horses, and you like to be in your place of safety, and you don't make the big decisions. So when you get to a scary arena with bush around it, then it's too much for you to deal with. Okay, so that's why, we have a good relationship, connection, rapport with our horses when we work them, so they feel confident that we can take some of the load off of them, but not take all the load off of them. They still have to process and think about things, but they're not alone. So, but so other horses don't want to go to the arena because they see the arena as a place of, oh no, that's the place that the last owners, chased me around and spurred me and dragged my head around, and I really don't want to go to the arena because I know what's going to happen, or I think I know what's going to happen. So that's why, over the years, I've really tried to look at how we can educate horses so the education gets them in a good mindset and they feel okay about pressure. They're not going, oh, I'm a release hunter and I don't like pressure and things like that. So, I could waffle on for hours about, the reasons why and why not. But I guess the solution, to most of these problems will be fairly similar. So I'll go through the things that I think people are going to need. One, is your horse comfortable around you, and do you have a reasonable connection with it? Does it feel safe? Does it kind of genuinely like you, or does it just not want to be around you? So basically, if the horse is comfortable around you, it's going to have a level of safety safety in numbers, because you're one of those numbers that can help it. You're like, another confident horse with it. So that's really important to have with your horse. So if they kind of get a hard eye when you walk up to them, or they sort of shut down a little bit, or they're a bit timid, and but they don't look so timid when they're around the other horses, then that there's a feeling in that horse that when you're around it, you're adding to the worry cup. So when it goes halfway down towards the arena, it's already got worry in the cup because you're with it, and then all of a sudden it sees the arena and goes, oh no, that's the scary place, and the worry cup fills up. But if you have a good rapport with your horse, then they feel safe with you. So you being with the horse is not filling that worry cup up. And the next thing is not just, is your horse comfortable with you? Does your horse know that you're confident? And some people, their horses like them. I like you when you're in your pajamas, you scratch me on the rump and you do these nice things, and I kind of really like you, but I'm not going to go into the scary place with you because, you're a bit fidgety and you sometimes make bad decisions and you're always focusing on me all the time and trying to correct me all the time, and you're not actually looking after yourself. So when we lead horses and take horses into new environments, we got to have our own stuff together, which was, I know where I'm going, I know my footfall, I'm grounded, I'm calm, I'm focusing on the environment as I go. And, what I try to show people is when you're walking somewhere, you're actually scanning the environment and you're letting your horse know that I'm actually scanning the environment as well. And I'm saying, look, I haven't found anything scary. I've been looking. I noticed the rock over there. I noticed that tree over there. And I was gently noticing things, but I wasn't bothered by those things. If you're constantly focusing on your horse or, micromanaging your horse, then you're not even looking after yourself as a leader. So the horse is kind of left on their own going, well, they're not even looking at the environment. They're not in charge of their own footfalls. That's really important if you're going to new places where your horse might get a bit challenged by the environment, is you've got your stuff together so they don't have to worry about you. So look like you know what you're doing. Look like you know that you're walking confidently, calmly, as I said, scanning, so they know that you're doing your responsibility, and don't always turn around looking at them and just manage them. That's really important. So same as when you're riding, like you're just sitting calm, guiding your horse, and riding they have to lead out themselves a bit more, but that's what we teach them. And then the other thing that I think about is just educate your horse somewhere. It's not about tricks to get it to the arena. The first thing I do is, good leading exercises that get it to let go of strong thoughts. Like if the horse gets fixated and stands there and just braces, then obviously it doesn't understand how to lead, because if it understood how to lead, it would let go of that thought and soften and actually try to follow that lead rope. So basically the fact that it can just stop and say, I don't want to go down there, is almost saying it doesn't trust the lead rope and it can block it out. So I just work the horses wherever, not work them as in, I'm going to make you work when you stop, and then when you want to go, I'm not going to make you work. I just educate them wherever something happens, and I just work on what's happening at the time. So if the horse is a little bit bracy, a little bit heavy, has a backward thought, I might lead it and do some exercises to get it to get a forward thought in the lead rope. If it looks over there at something off in the distance and fixates, then I'll work on interrupting that thought and seeing if I can get the horse to a stage that it's very easy to interrupt it. And then once it's very interruptible and it's leading okay, then I might just lead it back towards the barn and then take it back out again and have another go until the horse is going out a little bit further from the barn every time, until you get it back down to the arena. So you're doing it via graded exposure in increments, but you're not just going to go out and then back and out and then back. You're actually just educating it and getting them a lot softer until you can finally get them down to the arena. But by the time you get them to the arena, if they see something a bit scary, you can help to interrupt them. They're more confident with the leading, they're more confident with you, and then they're actually starting to get more confident in themselves because you've given them some guidelines, some clear boundaries, pathway that they can follow. Then then you have the tools down at the arena when things happen down there that might be a bit adverse to what you want.
Okay, and what about an older horse? This question comes from Kate, Australia, who can get her older 19-year-old on a float, no problem at all. But she's noticing that now he's starting to scramble. She thinks it could be anxiety stacking over a number of years, but could it also be due to a balance older? She's also wanting to know how she can help him feel more confident.
So with the idea of anxiety stacking, I think she's, Kate, you're spot on about anxiety stacking, because I see a lot of horses that they load and unload and load and unload, and then all of a sudden something happens, and then all of a sudden they have a real bother up, and then that turns into something that the float is a big problem. But they've always been thinking that, except their obedience and their sort of their helplessness in the float has just made them kind of semi-freeze and just kind of deal with it. And that's what we don't want. We don't want them frozen dealing with it, because that is anxiety stacking, and one day something's going to go wrong and they'll never trust the float again, and it'll get a lot harder. Okay, so what you generally have to go back, if any of the horses that have been through that scenario where they've, loaded for years, semi-frozen, and then suddenly, they're scrambling and they're kind of finally you've hit the trigger that the float is a big red flag, you've got to go back and address the good quality leading. As I say, always go back to leading. How does your horse lead? How loose, how mobile they are? How can they change their thoughts? Do they trust that lead rope? And how adjustable, can I loosely move them backwards and forwards? Another thing, if they've got to that stage, they're not balancing well, they're worried they've been frozen inside the boundaries of the float for quite a while, then I'd go back to long reining, because long reining, you can put them in the long reins and move their hindquarter around, move their forequarter around, move their hindquarter around, and get them so loose at having those reins, just moving them softly, that they actually get more mobile and able to adjust inside tight boundaries. Put a breeching rope on them, get them to lead off that butt pressure, the rump pressure, the breeching rope, back them into that breeching rope, lead them forward in the breeching rope, so they're very comfortable about having something behind them and yielding softly to that. Basically, wherever they feel that boundary of a long rein or a breeching rope or something on their body, they can adjust softly and loosely and accurately to the amount of pressure in that rope or feel in it and the direction of it. And then what happens if they move along inside the float, they feel the side of the float there, they'll adjust softly with their feet, rebalance, things like that. And you do that till you don't feel any freeze and you feel nice flow in your horse. Then you take them back to the float and you make them load very slowly, and till every footfall you've accounted for, and you've accounted it for saying that was a soft footfall and a thoughtful footfall, and you were kind of loose, and then when the horse loosens up in the leading and taking that one step on, one step off very softly, you might let them stand a little bit, just relax, maybe sniff the float. Then what I would do, say, before they go all the way in, and they're just still on the ramp and off the ramp, I'd actually make the float a little bit scary and wobble it and make some noises in it and maybe bang it with a flag or something, and get them to loosely move on and off the ramp while that float is a little bit more challenging. And if that freezes them and they want to run backwards as soon as that float starts to kind of vibrate and do things, then, well, you know what's going to happen when they travel, and you haven't done your job at getting them right yet. So basically you keep working on that until they're loading loosely when the float's moving. It's going right back to what you would teach a young horse to go through. And if I see them blocking them out, sometimes I will do more banging on the float so they actually think about it. So, and then work your way all the way in. And then when you're finally all the way in and the horse can back out and go in and back out, then, and the other thing for horses that have been frozen in the float, actually, if they choose to back out, sometimes I allow them to back all the way out, and I'll ask them to load up in again, and I'll allow them to back out until eventually they've backed out 50 times and they've gone, oh, I'm allowed to move in this float. By the 50th time, a lot of times they actually go, I don't need to back out. I've backed out that many times now. I'm not really that worried about it, and I'll go back in, but I can always adjust and move. And some of those horses, it is essential that if they did want to back out, if you held them and you knew they were going to pull back, well, one, you could go back to better leading, or two, what I'm saying is by allowing them to back out, they did something in the float that made themselves feel better. And I know that was backing out, but as I say, if they do it enough times, they'll have ticked it off their bucket list and go, well, I actually don't feel like I need to do that anymore, so I'm happy to follow your guidance. And that's when you go back to back in and out, with your idea, and with the lead rope. But when they're in there also, then you put the breeching rope up, the breeching gate, whatever, and then you walk them softly inside that float until they're very soft inside the float.
Okay, now we're going to move on to horses when they actually get to the destination. So I've got two questions here for horses that are new area completely. The first one is from Laura from Australia. She'd like to know if you've got any tips about what you might do with a young horse. Get on the float, travel fine, but when you get to a new place, what sort of training would you try and work with that young?
So when I get somewhere, what training would I do to make them more confident at getting back on the float when they get there?
No, just to be comfortable in the new area.
To be comfortable in the new area, yep. So basically, as I was saying earlier on, everything we do is to make a horse feel better, more confident, but feel better about thinking, searching, understanding pressure, all that sort of stuff. So basically, if I get to a new place, the things that I want to work really well is my horse's mind adjustable, and have I made them so adjustable in a safe environment that they know that I can get them to let go of thoughts really easily. I can, they don't gaze off into the distance. They can process, they can problem solve. So the things that we're teaching our horses, like problem solving, obstacles might be problem solving. So a horse has got a tricky obstacle to go over, so they've got to solve that problem, and then they've got to back off that obstacle, and they've got to think about things and, figure stuff out in their obstacles and all sorts of stuff like that. And so basically, and if you've got that good connection with your horse in the safe place, when you go somewhere else, you should be able to draw upon those tools. So all I would do when I go to a new environment is, do what the horse tells me to do, which is wherever my horse is at when it gets off the float is going to tell me what I need to do next. So if the horse gets off the float and it's going, oh, gee, everything's scary, then I might just say, well, you're bouncing around a little bit too much. And I would say, let go of that thought. Just, be present. Just come back to me with your thoughts for a second. And then I would say, now you can think about the other things again. So the first thing I'll always test when I get off the float is, can I gently interrupt you and say, you don't need to snort and stare off into the distance. It's not going to help you. Can I interrupt that? And they go, yeah, sure. And you go, good. Now I can interrupt that. Now I'm going to just stand back and give you some distance and let you process the new environment again. If they get a little too fixated or looks like they're starting to wind themselves up, then you just go in and help interrupt them, whether that be a pick up of a rope, a bang on the leg, whatever. And I just work until the horse goes, oh, no, actually, I was a bit fixated before, but nothing's changed. Yeah, there's still some cars over there, but they're moving around, but nothing's actually chased me. Nothing's come at me. Maybe I'm okay. And actually, some of the things here are actually similar to some of the things in my safe environment. It's just that I'm somewhere else and everything's different. I'm not used to this teleporting stuff. So basically, once you can get them back into a soft space, you might take them around in that new environment. Just get them used to a new environment a little bit, just being with you, connected, and showing them that they're not going to get hurt. We're safe. You still can trust the lead the same as you do. You can still trust me the same as you do when you're somewhere else, when you're back at home. And now I'm going to teleport you back home again. And you put them back on the float and take them home. And they arrive at home and go, well, how'd I get here? Wow, that's a fancy machine, that thing. Just turn up in new places. So basically you try and get them to show them and do the simplest exercises that they've done, that they do very well, that's going to help their mindset at the new place, until they go to a new place and go, you've got this, I've got this, I'm cool with this. And then you might start to go, let's advance, and maybe you might be starting to ride your horse and do different things like that, and whatever. But as long as the first thing you do is say, you're at a new place, but you can center and start to process and be soft, and everything's okay. And that's how you grade their exposure to new environments that they've got off the float at. Sometimes some horses are fine. It doesn't take very long. Others need a bit more of that. But what a lot of people do, the first new environment is a big trail ride with 50 horses, and they get on a ride and they just go off, and then they teleport away across the countryside on the horses, and the horse is just in a complete, I don't know where I am. So you just got to get used to that experience first.
Keeping it simple might be a good card to play. So I'm going to talk now, ask you about something else. It's a question. Andrea, so she was long reining her horse in a town, and her horse got completely overloaded. So she was preparing him for carriage driving. But what she found was that around every corner there was an activity. There were kids playing, there were dogs barking, and despite her being really calm and really, trying to help him, he ended up quite concerned, and he was just jogging in circles around her all the way back to the float, which is quite unusual for him. Andrea would like to know, what would you do so that she can sort of help if this was to happen, this was again? What can you do so that you can make things a bit easier for when there's no safe place? You mentioned that she saw you at a clinic once, put a horse back in the yard, so regulate.
Yeah, so there's a horse once at a clinic that
I...
Oh, sorry, Jenny, there was just a glitch, and I thought you'd stopped. Oh, yep. So the horse that I put in a new environment, I put back in the paddock, was a horse. The only place I could help it soften was in its yard. So I helped it soften in its yard and say, if this is the only place I can, as long as I've helped you go into a better place, it doesn't matter where I do it, because this horse was an ex-race horse though, so it had been completely fried somewhere along the way. When you sort of say, I'm out long reining and this is happening, what do? I instantly go, what haven't you done? As in, it's not what do I do and what do I, it's what haven't we done yet? Is there something that we haven't done in the preparation to going out. And usually, when I'm at clinics, right, I've done this, I've done that, right, I'm ready to go out long reining or ride out, whatever it is, and then something happens, the horse blows up, and I go, I noticed when you were riding or long reining, you had a set rhythm and a set rein speed, and every time you pick up the reins, you pick up in this rhythm, you step back, you turn like this, and I said, you don't really speed it up, it's always the same. So when a horse kind of throws itself a little bit from a spook into the reins or into the long reins, it feels the reins catch a lot quicker than it's used to, because it's out of rhythm, it's out of context, and the reins start to worry them. So basically, before we go out into an environment that's got kids playing and all these sorts of things going on, we have to go, have I challenged my horse enough, and does my horse know the reins, or am I still teaching it the reins? So in long reining, say for instance, if you're doing just the basic, keep the horse in between the reins, move it around in between the reins, back up, go forward, turn, back up, go forward, simple 3 things. Does my horse know how to do that 100%? Is it 100% safe in the reins? If I'm moving around it and I speed it up, is it okay to speed up and be a little bit faster but stay loose and soft in those reins? If I suddenly stop and then start again, if I suddenly do this in the long reins, is the horse comfortable with that? Or am I just using a set rhythm all the time, and then all of a sudden the environment changes, the horse gets worried, but then all of a sudden, because it's worried, it's bouncing around, then all of a sudden the reins are different speeds and different pressures, and now I'm worried about the reins as well. So I'd go back first before you even think about how you can fix being in a new environment, and work out, how adjustable is my horse in the long reins? Can I make it a bit faster, slower? Can it be more varied? Can I surprise it and do all those things first? I carry a flag with them, and I'll bang a fence as I'm walking along, and I might if there's a tin wall, I'll go brrr along the tin. I'll sort of, in an environment where I'm working, I'll create stimulants around the horse, and then I'll sort of stop and I'll go, oh, shiny thing over there, and I'll get a bit lost, and then I'll go, oh, what are we doing again, and go back to work again, and kind of be a little bit unpredictable. But the one thing it is predictable is that when the reins pick up, the horse can soften and control that pressure in the reins. And by controlling the pressure, I mean, if that pressure speeds up, the horse keeps the same feel on the reins by speeding up. And things like that. And I would go back and look at all those things before you go out, and add stimulants, visual stimulants, different things, noises, make the environment that your horse is already in a little bit more challenging, so it's not completely in a new place with lots of things going on. It's the same place with just a lot more happening. And then go out in increments, and go out 100 meters, come back, or 50 meters, whatever it takes, to go out a bit, come back, go out again, come back, so the horse can always come back to safety. Even if you've got to go back to safety 20 times and say, I will always take you home, I'm not abducting you and just keeping you out. So then once your horse knows that, then you go further and further, and they get a lot better. And as I say, that exposure will help them prepare for the extra exposure to the new scary things outside.
Fantastic. It sounds like increments are the key to all of this, building it up.
Increments, yeah. And I think the one thing I probably missed in saying, I did say it, but I'll say it in another context, is like, a lot of times we're teaching, but at what point do we test our horses? So if I was teaching children, or anyone, adults, okay, I'm teaching you in this environment, but you have to have completed the test before I teach you to do it in that environment. You have to be you have to be like in the army, for instance. They might train on some exercise, that many times in a safe environment until they test them, and they have to have a certain amount of accuracy and success in that environment before they send them into the real environment, which is the war environment or something like that. And I think what we do with horses, we actually need to put a sort of test on them and say, can you complete this with a certain amount of success rate, like a high percentage success rate, and you could almost do it blindfolded, because you've got this, you understand this. And I think that's sometimes what we've got to do when we throw the horses off a cliff and take them outside into some really different environments that can be quite challenging.
Hey, that's all we've got time for today, but I hope that helps with any of you who are getting your horses out and about, getting to places, traveling, and then coming home. Hopefully that has given you a few answers to some very common problems. Thanks very much, Mark. We'll be back next week with some training tips.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you, everybody.
If you'd like to ask Mark your question and get his insights to help you and your horse, it's easy to join Mark Langley online. Head over to marklangley.com.au and hit join. It's less than a couple of coffees, and the Q&A is just a piece of a whole package designed to support you and your horse with great training.